Welcome, everyone, to our podcast today with Judy Sanders. We are delighted to host her as our guest. She is a community maker, and we are so appreciative of the work that she's done here in Ellensburg and beyond to build community. And so, Phil, what do you think?
Well, that's the key, building community. The whole idea is voices from the village, what we can say and hear and listen to, that helps us develop community here. Ellensburg is a great little town. Been here now since 1979, and really appreciate a lot of the things the community has to offer. So we have 3 questions for you today.
All right.
One is, what do you appreciate? What inspires you about the community? The second is, what kind of challenges do we face? And the third is, how do we know if we're getting better?
Okay.
And let's start with the first one.
First one,
Yeah, what inspires you about Ellensburg?
the pioneer ethic.
Oh,
Ooh,
say a few more words about
Love
that.
this.
That's what I found. I think I moved here about 12 years ago. And shortly after I moved here, there was a fire in the food bank.
oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Taylor Bridge fire.
They didn't.
No, the food bank fire.
They didn't.
Oh, the food bank fire.
Yeah, the building on Water Street that burned.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that.
And they didn't miss giving us a single meal because the community stepped in. People stepped in, brought food, brought money,
Mm-hmm.
anything they would do to help them keep the food bank going. And I think it was a Reeser Street Church said, "We've got this empty building. Would you like to use it?"
Oh, that's right. I'd forgotten about
You
this.
know, all
Mhm.
it was just this. All of a sudden, this thing that I would think in the 1880s, if somebody's barn was burning here, where people would come
Right.
running.
And
It's just, I got that same feeling. I love
Yeah.
that pioneer kind of ethic. And Ruth Harrington,
Mm-hmm.
oh, yeah,
all
known
right,
Ruth for a long time.
yeah, and how she thought there should be when they moved here. I think in the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
that they said the town people and the gown people don't communicate
Mm-hmm.
with each other, respect each other, whatever. So she had this idea, and Ruth is diminutive. She's appears
And yet powerful.
appears
Yes.
fragile, never raises her voice,
Mm-hmm.
and she invited, I think it was 6 women or 12 women or something from each
Yeah.
category, sort of, and said it was a scholarship to raise scholarship
Mhm.
money for the students
Mhm.
at Central, and I think you had to donate $1.75.
Mm.
And then each one of those women were to go home and do the same thing. And that's been going on since then. And as you know, just a few
Mhm.
years ago, they celebrated over $1 million that have been raised through her efforts.
Wow.
And they're still going. This
Oh,
Friday,
yeah.
this Friday, I go to a brunch, and
Oh, very good.
it's surged up to $5.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Big spender you
But-
are.
Yeah, it's and wonderful people. Just wonderful women I've met. Just great.
It's interesting that you mentioned this because one of our featured guests is a woman named Stephanie Castillo, and she has started Women Wine Wednesday, and it's similar to what you're talking about with Ruth,
Oh.
but not with the philanthropy of Ruth, but essentially is this idea of bringing women together of all sorts, not just one particular type of woman or a belief system of woman. It is women that are. It started with I think 4 or 5 women, and then the idea was next time bring a friend, and then next time bring another
Okay.
friend, and then pretty soon it expanded, and it's doing the same thing I think that you're talking about. It's just
Yeah.
interesting that you're talking about it as we're getting ready to interview Stephanie about her project.
Well, that's interesting because women in particular need each other.
Mm.
I remember I was in the wonderful play Quilters, and I remember as I was researching that and reading lots of letters and so from the pioneer women.
Yeah.
And there was one woman who wrote about they were isolated, as often these farms were. You know, lived in a dugout way out in North Dakota or someplace.
Yes.
And a couple came through
Mhm.
that were going west. And she said, "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen another woman's face."
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, this was so important. There's a connection sometimes. I think that happens more with women than with men. I don't know, but there is this connection that happens there. I've been very encouraged by the new elementary school being named for Ida Ironica.
Mm-hmm.
It's about time
Ida Nason.
somebody recognized
Mm-hmm.
what we just waltzed in here and said, we'll just take over. Like that
Yeah.
tends to be our
Yeah.
that we somehow we think we're privileged to do that.
It certainly did feel
Terrible.
that way. Yeah.
It's terrible. But here, at least, we are recognizing that this generous, bright Native American lady,
Mm-hmm.
Yakima, I think, and I'm
Mhm.
not sure.
Yakima, Kittitas tribe of the Kittitas band of the Yakima.
Okay, that what she did to help people adjust to being here and her friendship and so it makes a big difference and made a difference in this community. So those are the things that are encouraging
Mm-hmm.
that I see. People reaching out on very small levels. You come to the post office, somebody holds the door for you.
Yeah.
There's a
Mhm.
sense of trust. At least when I moved here, I thought after a few months, what am I feeling? And I thought, like I moved from Seattle, I feel safe.
Mm.
Oh,
I thought, you know,
it's a very important thing to feel.
yes, and I want that for everybody
So do we.
here. That's what we're
Yes.
edging away from and being anxious about.
It's interesting you say this because before we started our podcast this morning, you're our second guest of the day, and Phil and I were talking, and in my past life, there has been times where I felt anxiety, like lying in bed and it feels like a truck is parked upon my chest, you know, and I'm starting to feel that same kind of percolation, but for different circumstances. And I think that a lot of people, my wife is feeling the same way, and I feel it's a really important conversation to have. Is that I think a lot of us as Americans are not feeling safe. We're feeling anxiety. We're feeling distress. We're feeling a lot of icky feelings. And it doesn't matter which side of the aisle that we are on. I think the more we can come together, which is the purpose of this podcast, is to bring people together. I think the less of that anxiety we will feel and the less othering will be happening. So I appreciate that you, and I acknowledge that you brought this up because I'm feeling a little bit I'm feeling unsafe as well.
I think probably everybody is right now, as you said. A lot going on that we're uncertain about.
Exactly.
And when we're uncertain, we tend to guess in the negative, and guessing in the negative tends to bring out more anxiety. And there's quite uncertain times right now.
And we just don't know what's going to happen.
Which kind of is a nice little segue into the section question about the challenges. What kind of challenges do you think Ellensburg faces as it tries to move to a more cohesive community where everybody does feel safe, everybody does feel accepted? What kind of challenges do we face on that path?
Well, I think we probably face the same challenges that a lot of smallish towns face. We see local journalism being hijacked, and where people used to count on the local paper that would not only have the news, but it would also say, oh, so-and-so's children are visiting from Virginia for the weekend and they had celebrated so-and-so's birthday or something. So there were these personal connections. And here our local paper has gone from 7 issues a week down to 4. And there isn't that, in my view, there isn't that personal connection. They do some of it, you know, but I think that's one of our, you know, I would like to see that back. And I had the feeling, you know, when Jazz in the Valley started out, when what else? Oh, the film festival.
Yeah.
So it was kind of this, okay, Mickey, let's put on a show sort of thing. And again, it was local and very much involved. And so the film festival doesn't exist anymore. People aren't going to movies so much, you know? I mean, there was a lot of connection with people during that time. You go downtown and you have your ticket and you can go from venue to venue, and the same with Jazz in the Valley. And now it's Music in the Valley, I think, or
Music festival.
Music festival or something.
Music festival,
but there was something about just the phrase Jazz in the Valley that was very compelling. I thought, whoa, you know, kind of feeling. So I sort of miss that connection on a small level. And there is this sense of mistrust that's crept in. You know, I don't feel as safe. And I think when there was that shooting at Jack in the Box, that really rocked me back.
For our listeners, and for those of you who don't or aren't from our little community, we had a shooting here, essentially on Main Street. It was on the corner of Main Street and University Way, where two very young men were involved in a gang dispute, and one shot the other and killed him. And our town was on lockdown. It happened in my neighborhood. It was only 3 blocks away from our home.
Right.
And so our whole community was on lockdown for a number of hours, and there were helicopters and drones flying, and it was really scary. And it was shocking. Of course, that was the biggest bit. It was just shocking that this could happen or would happen in our little cozy town of Ellensburg. And amongst other things, that was not the only thing that happened. It seems like it is a symptom, of things that are occurring in our little town.
Sure.
One of the things about, you mentioned local journalism, which I'm a very big fan of. What has happened with the demise of local journalism is people aren't getting information from the same source. With social media and all the different kinds of social media, different spectrum of social media, we're not getting the same information. So don't have the same knowledge base. And now we have such a range on the spectrum of from right to left about those sources. So I have information about something which draws me to a certain kind of conclusion. You have a different set which draws you a different set of conclusions. And it makes the community development more difficult because we're not speaking from the same place. We're not sharing the information.
And we can't assume that each other knows that you know what I know.
Right.
What
exactly.
I believe to be true.
Yeah.
What I believe to be true.
And
Yeah.
kind of pushes people away a little bit. We have to work harder to try to understand your point of view, my point of view.
Yeah. Isn't it ironic that the better communication sources we have, the further apart we get?
Mm-hmm. More disparate kinds of communication sources really do push us apart.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You're the important part of this conversation. You're our treasured guest.
Well, I think there was kind of an unspoken sense of values that we just assumed everyone shared.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was based mainly on truth.
Yeah.
And honesty. And now we've hit a point where we can't necessarily do that.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot necessarily believe. I thought when I was growing up, nobody told me this. I don't think I just had this thing because my parents were respectful of people who were elected and people who were our diplomats. And so I just assumed there were brighter, more educated, more tactful people who were in these positions.
Mm-hmm.
And we could count on them.
That's changed.
It's disheartening.
Yes.
And it makes you feel less secure.
Mm-hmm.
Because the values that we might hold dear in our family, and we always assumed people did, that now they're not even acknowledged. And truthfulness. What do you teach your kids right from little? You don't tell lies. You tell the truth. You tell the truth. And here we've got people in positions of authority who truth doesn't matter. And we have to sort out which is the truth. And we just isn't. So how do we do that? Maybe talking with our neighbors?
That's certainly one tactic, which we agree with.
Yes, of course, neighbors are. Your show, Meet Your Neighbor, was a brilliant show. It's actually your Meet Your Neighbor show is why I immediately thought of you to be interviewed for our podcast, Voice from the Village. We're doing the same work.
Yeah.
So could you do a tangent here and say more about that work you did?
Oh, Meet Your Neighbors?
Yeah.
Well, after I was here a few months and I was at some kind of party and I met this woman whom I'd never met before, liked her right away, as I do so many people here in Ellensburg. And we talked about it. She said, "Do you know anything about Ellensburg Community Radio?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And she told me about it. It's all volunteers and it's just getting started, kind of been doing a year or so maybe. And she said, "You ought to do a program." And I thought, well, what could I do? I'm not a music expert. I'm not, And then a little while later, I began to recognize that almost everybody I met was so interesting here. I mean, it didn't matter who it was. Somebody waiting in the post office line with you. And if you ask them, "Did you grow up here?" you'll find out all about them. And they were fascinating. Everybody was so interesting. And so I thought, well, maybe I can just do something where I'm just interviewing.
Cool.
Because I'm very nosy. Is what it really. Someone said, no, you're interested. I said, no, I'm nosy.
I think curious is the best way to
Curious,
say it.
yeah.
You're a curious woman, which is why I'm so attracted to who you how you show up.
My mom was. My mom was curious.
I love curiosity.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's best.
You know, it's interesting. There's a kind of a workbook thing called Without Spanking or Spoiling about discipline. We're talking 40 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever it is. And inside, as the adult, the parent, you could take this quiz, and in it, it helps you identify what you value, the values that you hold most dear, like yes or no, or maybe I want him to keep his room neat. You know, you find out what's important to you, and then it comes up with what you most want from your children. And mine was curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
It turned out, yeah, and they've all led very interesting, different lives from each other.
Very, very good. Yeah.
So they're nosy too.
So then you use your nosiness, your curiosity, and you started this radio program.
Right.
And it was called
Meet Your Neighbors.
Meet Your Neighbor. And how long did you do that for?
Oh, until COVID. So I think it was over 100 programs.
Wow, really?
110 or something like that. It was always fascinating.
And that's how you and I met.
Yes, right. Because I had met you because you were the principal of my grandson's elementary school.
Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then when I left that position, you interviewed me for.
Yeah.
You wanted to know why I did that.
Yeah.
So then we talked about it.
So you had to say so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how's it going?
It's going brilliantly.
You are finding yourself doing things that you hadn't anticipated was going to be involved.
And my path is. I have this saying that I lean on quite a lot, and that is, you will know that you were on your path when the path disappears. And so that has been me.
I like that. I hadn't heard that before.
It's pretty great, right? Because if you're on somebody else's path, then the path has been made. Mm-hmm. But if you're on your own path, you're making your own path.
Right.
You're bushwhacking, through the brush and the briars and the brambles and the thorns.
And I can just see you standing here. The path is ended. Really.
Yes.
Well, I guess this way there are fewer nettles. I'll go this way.
Yes, nettles sound great. My wife is lovely and beautiful and supportive, as you know, and so she's been really helpful in me being able to explore what it is that I want to be in life, which I'm still trying to figure out.
Me too.
Yeah. Me too. We always are.
I thought by the time you got to be about 30, so there really wasn't much left after that.
Yeah.
Turns out that's not the case.
Hogwash.
Turns out you're just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
At 86, trying to figure it out. But it's right there. If you listen. And one thing I did, I went to the, I wrote it down because I couldn't remember. Braver Angels.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Phil's done that as well.
I have done that as well, and they're coming again in the first Tuesday of April.
Yeah, I went to the last one. That was the first time I had gone.
I was there.
Oh, you were there.
I was there.
Yeah. And was it Emily? I think.
Yes, Emily.
Yeah. And I was so encouraged that there are people who are concerned as you are about what's really going on and what can we do to help each other, and the discrepancies and where the chasm seems to be getting bigger, and why is it getting bigger when what can we do to bring it together?
Well, one thing about that.
Can you speak into what Braver Angels is for our audience? Because
sure.
They may not know.
Braver Angels is an organization nationally, nonpartisan, that the purpose is to reduce the divide between people, particularly between Republicans and Democrats. But the notion is to set up dialogue, understand our own reasons for our own polarity. And that was the one we went to, was how do we get polarized internally? And what do we do about that? So it's a dialogue producing organization. The problem with the one we went to is that there was only one political spectrum represented.
Oh,
right.
And the one that's coming up, I believe it's the 2nd of April. Anyway, the first Tuesday, whatever that might be. We're going to work pretty hard at getting a full range of people there, so that it's not just one particular group.
Right.
Yeah. So it leaned towards the left. It
I lean towards the left.
Democrats.
Yeah,
And there weren't the right and the Republican Party wasn't well represented.
not at all. Wasn't anybody.
I don't think there was anybody.
There was nobody.
Gotcha.
So
that's tough to have it's tough to bring a chasm together if you're only on one side of the chasm.
right.
Right.
So the next one, we're going to work pretty hard about getting both Democrats and Republicans there.
Gotcha.
So that'll hopefully it might be a good opportunity for dialogue, for bringing people together. Just I hope
I hope
turns
so.
out that way.
Yeah. I hope so.
Well, this might encourage you. We have been, Phil and I know a lot of people, and so we have invited. This is our 10th recording or our 9th recording right now.
This is the 9th one, yeah.
Our 9th recording, and so we have had a variety of people on our podcast. Fascinating, interesting humans, just as you mentioned. Oh my gosh, this is so interesting.
Everybody.
It's so interesting, and we've had both sides of the spectrum, and it's always the same. We want to be a stronger community. We want to understand each other. We want to love one another. We don't want this divide to continue to occur. And so when you get down to the personal level, it's really evident that we want to be loved, seen, heard, understood.
I think maybe we need to just back way up to what is it the people in our community need.
You have a thought about that?
I do.
What is
Of
that?
course. They need to feel safe.
Yeah.
For one thing. They need to feel heard.
Mm-hmm.
They need to have good health care.
Yeah.
If they're having trouble, they need to know where to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can help with that.
I think we can. That's kind of a bad segue into our last question, the third one, which is, those are really good things. How do we know when we're
that
succeeding?
it's happening?
That it's happening. We're succeeding.
Yeah,
we're making
what are
progress.
the indicators. Oh my gosh, we got to step 1. We got to step 2.
I think you have to ask them.
Oh.
I think you have to ask the people. How's it going? You said you needed to feel. What would help you feel safer?
Yeah.
What would help you feel safer? And then, okay, we're going to try this and this and this, and then come back to them. Tell us how it's going.
Mm-hmm.
Are we making progress along this line? It sounds very complicated.
The city, through the Commission on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, is doing what are called listening tours, and that is speaking to groups about their experience, particularly minority groups, about their experience in Ellensburg. And then the whole notion there is to gather the information from the disparate groups, put it together, and make recommendations to the city about how we can do exactly what you said: feel safer, feel more welcomed, feel more comfortable.
Sure. And for people to know what's available free or very inexpensively.
Mm-hmm.
I think the adult activities center is just amazing. What you can, I put it at $45 for the year, and there's just all this wonderful free stuff. All these people you can meet. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful resource. But yeah, people. There was something else I jotted down.
How are we doing for time, Phil?
We have about 6 minutes.
Okay.
Plenty of time.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Plenty of time.
Oh, a respect for our history.
Ooh, tell us more.
Whoa. You know that there was a hanging tree?
Oh, yeah.
Right there in the corner by Grocery Outlet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the original name of the town and all these things. I think it would be good for people to get reminded of this is where we were. This is what we started out with. How the library got started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who helped that get started?
That was Carnegie, wasn't it? It was a Carnegie.
It was Carnegie Library.
Yeah.
And there's the first Friday group. It was a group, I don't know, I won't have this exactly right, but a bunch of women started, early 1900s.
Yeah, I knew that it was
with the purpose of education.
Literacy, yeah.
Literacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I think I'd like to see something in the paper, like a column called "Did You Know?" And then that there is this. Did you know that this group of women did? Did you know that this happened? I mean, there's so much I don't know about the history of the town.
There used to be that. It was called This Day in History.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, and they selected maybe 4 or 5 different years, and then had a little short story about what happened that day and that year.
Okay. Yeah.
That was a
I
cool
think
feature.
We're because we all share. I guess I would like to see an emphasis on the values we share.
Yes.
Whether it's
We share more than we don't. We share more values than we don't.
I would like to believe
I
that.
believe that to be true.
We're more similar than different.
Yeah.
Well, for one thing, when this little baby animal called a human baby is born, it's the same needs as the one born 2,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to meet those needs,
Mm-hmm.
and then keep meeting a child's needs, and keep in close touch with this child. A lot of time on your lap, so you know this kid.
You're right.
Then you can meet his needs, help meet his needs, which are going to be different from his brothers and different from his sisters. It requires a lot from the parents and the community to respect the individuality, and that whatever he was born with, that would make him uniquely himself. And
Takes a village to raise a child.
And honor that. Honor
Yeah.
that, whether it's convenient or not.
Yes.
We had a son who was not easy to raise, but he was certainly fascinating. He was born. We was born a drummer. He was drumming before he was born. He'd go kick, 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 kick. Where his older brother had been just a slow mover, and that he was born. Okay, where's the party? That was just hardly ever slept. Wonderful musician, funny, right? But hang on. Especially when they're teenagers, you gotta hang on, take your vitamins, get lots of rest when you've got teenagers. But I think so maybe that's what we need to do: is hang on, is keep our sense of humor, get to know each other well, put each other on our laps more often.
Well, I love that idea. I mean, maybe it sounds creepy putting somebody on your lap, but
That's a great idea.
as adults.
Yeah.
But I mean, being connected with another human, holding hands or arm in arm, or a hug. You talked about earlier. You were talking about we are connected yet less connected. So we have these devices that we're recording this podcast with. We're going to put our podcast up onto Podbean. Podbean's going to put it out to how many venues that people can see our podcast on, listen to our podcast, and so we have these tools that allow us to connect. But we're not connected because we can be disconnected. Go to a restaurant and watch how many people are at a restaurant together, a couple, and they're on their phone.
Yeah,
they're across the table from each other, and they're watching their phone. I know this because I have done this with my wife.
Well, knock it off.
Yes, it sounds easy to say that, but when you have, you're waiting for an important email or an important phone call, you call me or something, Phil. Right? Oh, here's Phil Backlund. I got to talk to Phil. Oh, I'm at a restaurant with my wife. I'll just text Phil back real quick and set it down. And I'm sure you can't tell me you haven't done the exact same thing.
I've never done that.
Really? Phil,
we're talking about truth.
But we need to kind of wrap this up. We're getting to our time frame here.
Maybe we need to think in terms of pulling each other onto our laps.
I like the idea.
The community
I like the idea.
Can do that when people need comfort, when they need information, when they need support. Community can do that.
As you said, hang on,
and pay attention.
Hang on and pay attention.
And listen to each other.
Listening is
my life always goes better when I'm grumpy or whatever, and I think, okay, what are you supposed to learn today? What are you going to learn today? Do you suppose? You got to shut up and listen, ask questions and stuff, and then find out what you're supposed to learn that day.
That's a great note to end on. Listen, everybody.
Yeah, listen to our podcast.
Listen to our podcast. Listen to each other. Learn more about each other. We all have wonderful stories. Listen to them.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Judy.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks, Judy. You're the best. I think that's a wrap for us. A wrap for us for the day. And appreciate you. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.